And here we are again. I ask you this question every weekend, or if I don't, every Sunday night I think of it. How come the weekends go so fast? I know the actual technical answer, the official response to that question, the company line is, well, duh. They are only 48 hours as opposed to the rest of the work week. 2 days versus 5 days. So, of course, they feel like they go faster, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about you blink and the weekends are done. And I'm thankful for them every weekend, really thankful for this past weekend. Actually, this is kind of crazy, but in my neighborhood, we didn't see the sun all weekend. Not at all. Not from Friday afternoon until presumably Monday morning when I get home from work. So I canceled my beach day. I didn't end up going to the beach because it was fairly rainy. Instead, 2 hours of yard work in soupy humidity. Oh, with a smoking lawnmower. Don't ask me why. I just know the thing was smoking. Maybe had to do with the oil that I put in it. Yes, I put it in the right place. Don't ask me that. I'm not as dumb as you think I am. Anyway, my lawnmower is about 7 years old, so it was smoking a little bit, but thankfully it finished the job. So 2 hours of mowing the lawn and weeding and just cleaning up the backyard and the front yard and trying to be ready for some company that I have coming over Labor Day weekend. That was instead of a beach day. No, it wasn't nearly as much fun. But in addition to that, I got a lot of other stuff done around the house. Try not to be jealous of my exciting Friday night when I was cleaning bird poop off of my car. Princess Leia does not like to be covered in bird poop. I think she looks awful when she's covered in bird poop, but I have one huge tree over my driveway. So I either park on the street, which I don't love, or I park Leia in the driveway and routinely every few weeks have to clean the bird poop off. So that was my exciting Friday night. Try not to be jealous of the glamour in which I live my life. So between bird poop and yard work and taking care of pets and cleaning the house, I did a little cooking. I'm going to try to do some baking this week since I have company coming. It was my sister-in-law's birthday on Sunday. So we all had fun showering her with love and adoration and thoughts of how beautiful she is, regardless of what the age on her birth certificate would tell you. So anyway, it was a relatively good weekend. But I also spent a lot of time watching the news, as I know many of you did. Now, by news, I mean both the news networks as well as the Weather Channel, which this weekend was probably carrying the most important news to those of us who are Americans. And the video coming out of Louisiana, specifically New Orleans, and the video coming out of the other parts of Louisiana that are being impacted by Hurricane Ida, as well as parts of Mississippi and Alabama and the Florida Panhandle. And so when Hurricane Ida made landfall in Louisiana, she was a Category 4 with maximum sustained winds of 150 miles per hour. And when I was driving into work, even in the New York City area, which is where we are headquartered as a network, a lot of what I was listening to, local news, was offering updates from Louisiana and then updates with their own meteorologists. And the last number I heard, over 1 million people without power in New Orleans area alone, including essentially all of New Orleans, their main hospital, which they couldn't evacuate because they have a lot of patients that right now are dealing with COVID. And so there was really no place to put them. And so the videos, especially along the coast and along the water. And here's the crazy part, you guys. This storm, Hurricane Ida, which is considered one of the strongest ever to come on land in Louisiana, it happened on the 16th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina. How is that? I understand there's a very defined hurricane season in the Atlantic and certainly in the Gulf. But are you kidding me? Exactly 16 years later? And so as many people were preparing in Louisiana, not just New Orleans, but again, the surrounding areas plus Mississippi, those who had lived through Katrina or had lost during Katrina were all remembering what that was like 16 years ago. And so I know there were massive evacuations, but there were some who chose to stay behind and to stay with their homes, with their property. I can understand that. As much as I recognize the need to be out of harm's way, that you can replace everything except for a life, I know it would be difficult for me to leave behind my house. Not so much the possessions, but just, hey, this is my responsibility. I need to be here. I need to make sure it's okay. I need to do what I can to help against water and storm surge and certainly just the damage and the debris. But there was at least one person who died in the New Orleans area because a house fell on his or her, a tree fell on his or her house. And those are things that you just can't prepare for. There's no way to prevent that from happening. And so that's why you evacuate. You evacuate because the storm surge and the water is so deadly. It can rise so quickly. We just saw this in central Tennessee a couple weeks ago, where in the span of a couple hours, they had homes and businesses and entire towns that were completely flooded because of 17 inches of rain. And so when it comes to that kind of water, there's nowhere for it to go except for into your homes. And so I understand the need for evacuation. A lot of people evacuated, but there were some that stayed behind. And so to that end, not only am I thinking about them, even as Ida has been downgraded to, I think, a category 1 is the last I saw. I don't have the Weather Channel up in here, but she's been downgraded. However, the amount of rain that will be dumped and the water that has no place to go is still very dangerous. And then I think about our first responders who are already out attempting harrowing rescues. So just a lot, of course, happening on our Gulf Coast. And even as much as I'm excited about tonight's show and football, and I think it's just the buzz of football season now being not even 2 weeks away. But there's this other side of me and my brain that is worried about those of you who are in Louisiana and Mississippi and, again, parts of Alabama and the Florida Panhandle. So please be safe and be smart. And to our first responders, EMTs, firefighters, law enforcement, thank you for what you do. Definitely thinking of you and also praying that you will remain safe as you go out in bravery and courage and try to save people who cannot save themselves. And then thinking, of course, about what's happening in Afghanistan. And I don't know how many of you were watching the news or even looking on social media. There were photos of the coffins of the 13 people who lost their lives in that suicide bomb attack at the airport on Thursday, I think it was. The coffins covered with American flags and the Marines carrying those coffins to where they would be honored and then ultimately laid to rest. And so even as we think about football and talk about football, my heart is torn and I'm thinking about people in our nation that are hurting. And I did hear this on the way in, and I'm not exaggerating. I teared up, because everything is so tense and there's so much anxiety around what's happening in Kabul. And even as the reports have us down to they're not sure, but about 300 Americans that are remaining in Afghanistan, which is amazing considering where we started. It's a tribute to not just our military, but our State Department, and then also commercial airlines. There have been airlines, not just from the United States, but airlines from all over the world who have done evacuation flights, which I think is phenomenal as well. It's definitely been an effort of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people to try to get anyone who wants to get out, people who have papers and our allies, and not just Americans, but British and German and French. And I'm sure many of you have heard the stories. But as I was driving in and the report came from Jennifer Griffin of Fox News that there are roughly 300 Americans still left in country that the State Department knows of. So there are some that may not have registered and they may not know about them. They may not be aware that they were ever there, or maybe they're not trying to leave. So it's very convoluted and complicated. But there were 5 rockets that were fired toward the airport, and they don't know exactly where the rockets came from. The suspicion is ISIS or some other terror group, but 5 rockets that were fired at the airport in Kabul on Sunday. And 7 several of them were brought down by our U.S. anti-missile defense systems. That when I heard that, I literally teared up. In the midst of chaos, we have got incredible military servicemen and women who are on the ground in Kabul and in other places around the world with the technology and are calmly knocking rockets out of the sky. I'm just so grateful for our U.S. military. And even though this has been a disaster of a couple of weeks in Afghanistan, I am grateful for all the lives that have been saved and still thinking about the families and mourning the loss of those who died in that suicide attack. And if you go on Twitter or Facebook or any of the social media sites and you look up the U.S. Marine Corps accounts, or you look up any of some of the other military accounts, you'll see photos of not just the coffins with the American flags draped on them, but also you'll see the names and the faces. And from what I can tell, the majority of those who died in Afghanistan serving in the U.S. military were in their 20s. I've seen 22, I've seen 23, I've seen 25. One leader was 31, but just heartbreaking. And so even as we try to get the rest of our Americans and our allies out of there, this has left a lasting impact, of course, in families who will never be the same, a military who will never be the same. And as it happens, we're days away from the 20th anniversary of 9/11, which I'm sure is not lost on either ISIS or Al-Qaeda or the Taliban. So thinking of so many other things outside of sports, and my heart is torn. It's heavy for our nation and for the people who are in harm's way. And yet I'm so, so proud of the people who go out there and do what they can to make a difference, even if it doesn't get noticed and doesn't get reported on. So thank you. I know we have a lot of not just expats, but military veterans and active military who listen to the show. We have a ton of first responders who listen when they are working overnight or late night. And I just want you to know, from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate you so much, and I'm so grateful for you. It's After Hours with Amy Lawrence on CBS Sports Radio. We are live from the Rocket Mortgage Studios. Do you need to know what it takes for a home to fit your budget and your family? Rocket can. So you can find me on Twitter, ALaw Radio. I'm always glad to talk to you. And I do try to respond to as many people as I can. It's impossible for me to respond to everyone, but especially if you're new and you're just tuning into the show for the first time, or you just found us on social media, I try to connect with you. Our show Twitter is After Hours CBS, and then our Facebook page. And the reason you need both of those addresses on social media is because Survivor Island is now taking your reservations. Now, I don't know how long your stay is going to be. We can do this a little bit like an Airbnb. You can book it for an extended stay, and then you might be able to check out after 1 week. That's typically how I do things. I think, oh yeah, long vacation, and then a weekend I'm bored and I decide, nah, I think I'll leave the island. No, that's not how it happens. But if you believe that for a second, well then, I have done my job. No, I just suck at survivor pools and picks in general. I overthink it, whether it's March Madness, whether it's the NFL. I overthink it. And so I do not do well at these things. But if I can even last past the first week, I will be thrilled. It will be a major victory. So please, whether you would like to make picks and you believe that you have what it takes to outlast the crew, and the crew is me and producer James. We are the crew. I suppose we can make up some other names and pretend like we have a larger crew, but that would be a bald-faced lie, and I don't have time for that. So come, try to outlast the crew. And since you'll probably outlast me, here's what else you can plan on with Survivor Island. You can stand on the island and watch me walk the plank into shark-infested waters and point and laugh. And be like, that host doesn't know what she's talking about. Oh, my goodness. So, yes, Survivor Island is up and running. You can find the link on our show Twitter, After Hours CBS. It's pinned to the top of our show Twitter page. So super easy to find. And you can also check it out pinned to the top of our Facebook page. Now, producer James tells me we've already had a bunch of people who signed up. You may, if you played with us before, then you may have, I have an itchy nose. I don't know why. Sorry, if I sneeze, just excuse me. Sometimes I do sneeze in the middle of the show, and there's absolutely nothing I can do about it. Sometimes I try to get to a break and just sound funny while I'm doing it. Right now, no one has commented. No one has replied. I don't know if that's because you haven't seen it yet or because you're just doing your thing and you're signing up and you don't need our assistance anymore. But what we found in the past is that many of you have a hard time packing for Survivor Island. You need some advice. So consider us to be the AAA of this vacation to Survivor Island, and we're here to help and answer your questions. Don't wait until the season kicks off because by then it's too late. And remember to always save your work. So again, pinned to the top of our Facebook page or on our Twitter, After Hours CBS. And then I did retweet the link as well, just to remind you, you have 2 weeks. I know that seems like a long time. I'll even retweet it again. I am so super impressed with the GIF that producer James found for our Twitter link. This is hysterical. I don't know where I completely forgot that he was on Survivor. So don't tell anyone. They have to go and they look. And the eyeballs and the fact that he has to put out his own torch. All of those things are just fantastic. So yes, you can check that out on either my Twitter or again, pinned to the top of our show Twitter page, plus pinned to the top of our Facebook page. So you no longer have to ask. Mary, I hope that you've joined us on Survivor Island. Our phone number is 855-212-4227. That's 855-212-4CBS. So we have a lot to do. Quarterbacks are not the only news, but they're certainly dominant on this final weekend of the NFL preseason. But we have more to talk about. For instance, what is Javi Baez doing? It's a war you can't win, Javi. I'm telling you, you can't win this. You've already dug yourself such a deep hole that you're going to have a hard time getting out of it. But this is not a battle you can win. Take it from me. You can't win this one. All you're doing is feeding the trolls. So you might as well stop now. So we'll get to Javi Baez and the latest from Major League Baseball. Great news from Chris Bassett. Remember, he got beamed in the head with a line drive. Well, beamed in the face, actually, with a line drive a couple of weeks ago. But the Oakland pitcher says he is intent upon pitching again this season, which is awesome. If you watch Daytona under the lights on Saturday, well, it was major drama all the way to the end. I mean, the type of drama that makes you clench your butt cheeks. Maybe makes them clench their butt cheeks. Some of them just can't handle the close and tight racing with the bump drafting in the final 10 laps. Some of them always blink and cause this massive wreck. And then also, you want to talk about drama? How about a 6 playoff hole championship finish to the BMW in golf? 6 playoff holes. Oi, even if you don't like Bryson DeChambeau, you have to feel for him on this Sunday night. As we head into Monday morning, we will welcome our old friend Matt Adams, because not only do we have the FedEx Cup playoffs in golf, but we also have a significant anniversary in Tiger Woods' career, even as we wonder if we'll ever see him again on a PGA course. And then we also have the Ryder Cup coming up in the next few weeks, which is pretty exciting. So there's a lot to do. Matt won't join us until the final hour live. We're going to start with quarterbacks straight ahead because Kyle Shanahan's playing with us. Seriously. So when I tell you Javi Baez is engaging in a war he can't win, that's true. But Kyle Shanahan is pretty sure he has us exactly where he wants us. So he's playing with us. Plus, the latest on the other quarterback battles around the NFL. Some questions answered, some not so much. I'm really glad to have you with us. Again, thank you so much for hanging out on Twitter or Facebook. Find us there and join us on Survivor Island. It's After Hours with Amy Lawrence on CBS Sports Radio.
You are listening to the After Hours podcast.
It's whatever he decides. Yeah, I have a pretty good idea. I'm pretty happy with where I'm at right now and everything, and just the offense as a whole. But yeah, Kyle's the head man. He'll make the call.
This is After Hours with Amy Lawrence.
Kyle, meaning Kyle Shanahan, has not yet made a call, at least not publicly. And boy, does he love answering these questions. It's really funny because we all know if he answered the question about who his starting quarterback will be for the season opener, the questions would stop. But he either doesn't want to just because he doesn't want to, because he doesn't feel like he needs to, because the public is on a need-to-know basis, or he legit doesn't know. And so he's still trying to figure it out, which, I don't know. According to Jimmy Garoppolo last week, he said he had a pretty good idea. Now, what we saw on Sunday night in Santa Clara with the Niners against the Raiders preseason finale is that Garoppolo and rookie Trey Lance were working in tandem as though they were riding a tandem bike. One would take the lead, then the other would take the lead, on and off the field, on and off the field. And then the first two touchdowns were both rushing touchdowns by the quarterbacks. Oh, heavens. Whatever works. Kyle Shanahan digging deep and getting creative. It's After Hours with Amy Lawrence on CBS Sports Radio. So once again, the question for Shanahan following Sunday's preseason game, what about your starting quarterback? Who's it going to be, Kyle?
By no means was it perfect, but I thought just the function of it and going in and out and not knowing when it's going to be, it wasn't a planned rotation or anything. I was trying to make it situational, so I was just doing it mainly off impulse and, whenever the down and distance, it felt like what we wanted to call. So those guys seemed like they handled it good. I'll meet with them tomorrow and watch all with them, which I'm looking forward to. But today I thought it was good. Guess we'll have to see. I don't like playing this game, but everyone keeps asking me that question. I'm not just giving the answer just to satisfy the question. I think we got a pretty good idea, like I said, all along. I think our team does, and we're pretty good with it as long as I can keep surviving press conferences.
Oh, poor Kyle Shanahan. Please find me the world's tiniest violin so I can play it for you as long as I can survive these press conferences. What are you, Aaron Rodgers? You're going to start waxing poetic about your philosophies on the media. Stop it. The media is going to keep asking. Everyone's going to keep asking until an announcement is made. Now, if you believe that what we saw on Sunday is a preview of what we're going to see during the regular season, that could be intriguing. According to Jimmy Garoppolo, he said he had a pretty good idea of who's starting, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the starter is going to be out there the majority of the time or even half the time, right? So Garoppolo, if you're keeping score at home, this is crazy. We're now down to counting plays. I'm not. I found them online. But I have a possible 24 plays that were done with the first team offense. Jimmy Garoppolo took 14 snaps. Trey Lance took 10. It was an even split. I mean, there are literally people who are out there counting. It was an even split on the first drive, 5 for each. And as I say, both of these guys end up with a rushing touchdown. The quarterbacks do. Wonder how the receivers feel about that. And so, while we get this whole situational strategies answer from Kyle Shanahan, that this is not about how I'm going to do it during the season or who's starting, there is this idea out there that we're going to see a lot of Trey Lance, maybe not quite the same role as, say, a Taysom Hill, who has a variety of skills. And we know that Sean Payton, I almost said McVay, we know that Sean Payton wants to use them to throw defenses off balance because he can do a lot of things. So I don't think you're going to see Trey Lance with that much versatility. But if he believes that Trey can give a different look to the defense, maybe we'll see him in specific packages. Now, I think it's pretty obvious that Trey is not ready. I mean, I think when you watch him out there on the field, yes, he's got some flashes of brilliance. He's got a strong arm. He's certainly very athletic. But I think I don't want to say obvious, but I think it's apparent that Garoppolo is the more seasoned quarterback and is more adept and equipped, especially once you throw Trey Lance in against the number one defenses. We're not talking about a play here or a play there. We're talking about a quarterback who has to be in charge of this offense and run it forward, even though we know Kyle is a micromanager. So as long as Kyle Shanahan can survive the press conferences, Forget the pressure of being an NFL head coach. It's the press conferences that really get to the man. It was interesting to see those two quarterbacks on and off the field. And I guess you're going to get in your win sprints if you're Jimmy Garoppolo.
It was good. I thought it was two good drives with it. Defense was scrambling. It made for a tough drive on those guys. So that was pretty good.
I was prepared for it, so I think Jimmy was too. Same thing. I'm sure he answered it the same way. It's one of those things where we had repped it, like I said, so it was good to get game reps and kind of really see how it really feels.
The two quarterbacks don't seem stressed out by it, so I suppose that's a positive. Certainly prepared, and they may know a lot more than we know. They may have been instructed to zip it, right? But Garoppolo can't help it. He has a terrible poker face. So we don't yet know about the San Francisco 49ers, and weirdly enough, but this may just be Bill Belichick keeping it to himself or just getting annoyed at the question. I wouldn't be surprised if both he and Kyle Shanahan are in the same place. Belichick said after the Patriots preseason finale against the Giants, in which both Cam Newton and Mac Jones played, Mac a lot more. He didn't start, but the rookie went deep into the third quarter. Belichick said, yeah, no, when he was asked if he's named a starter for week number 1. His answer was, yeah, no, as in, yeah, no. It's like something you'd hear on Friends. Yeah, no. So anyway, maybe Belichick knows. Maybe he's already made his decision, but he's mums the word as well. We do know in New Orleans, though, even though the Saints are not actually in New Orleans right now. I'm not sure if you saw this, but the Saints are practicing at AT&T Stadium in Dallas or Arlington for 3 days because they evacuated in the advance of Hurricane Ida. They decided to get out of there. The team is supposed to hold workouts Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday at AT&T Stadium. Then they'll take their break, which was already planned before kicking off the regular season. They are supposed to open at home on September 12th. So 2 weeks from today, Sunday, supposed to open at home against Green Bay. Unless there was extensive damage to the Superdome. And remember, there certainly was during Hurricane Katrina. I'm sure for those of you who lived through it or remember it, you saw the photos of how badly damaged the Superdome was, not to mention it was the staging area for thousands and thousands of people. It turned into just a horrific situation inside the Superdome in all of New Orleans. They are better prepared this time, which is great. But will the Superdome be equipped to handle a game? We'll see. It did lose power, as most of New Orleans did, with Hurricane Ida coming ashore on Sunday. But that's still a couple weeks down the road. And my hope is that this will be a rallying cry. Football has been, Saints football has been for so many New Orleans and area Louisiana residents, how much they love their team, and it gives them something to look forward to and to be excited about. So I certainly hope that we will see that game take place at the Superdome. But according to reports around the Saints, Jameis Winston has earned the starting job there. Trevor Lawrence has earned the starting job in Jacksonville. That we know. Did you also know that Urban Meyer waited until the last second to trade Gardner Minshew to Philadelphia? That is just weird. It's not so much the trade, because that was rumored during the offseason. But why now? Did it dawn on Urban Meyer that he could have been giving all those reps to his rookie? Instead, he was splitting his reps with Gardner Minshew? Did he legit not know that he was going to start Urban Meyer? Just the whole thing's strange. Anyway, so we'll do more quarterback news. But coming up next, I'm warning you, Javi Baez, you can't win this battle. Don't feed the trolls, because you will get buried. It's After Hours with Amy Lawrence on Twitter, A-Law Radio, also on our Facebook page. We're glad to have you with us.
You are listening to the After Hours podcast.
You can win. The world keeps moving and you're standing far behind. People keep saying.
Breaking ball, that's hammered. Left field and deep. Baez knows he got it all. It's long gone. Into the second deck, Javier Baez stood and watched it sail. The Mets reclaim the lead. It's 3-2.
You can't win no way.
This is After Hours with Amy Lawrence.
As if the Mets didn't have enough problems, Javi Baez pours some gasoline on the fire, or as I like to do every now and then when I get impatient. What, me? Impatient? I know that's hard to believe. Patience is not my virtue. I try, but it's not my best feature. In fact, it's probably not a feature of me at all. Anyway, when I get impatient with my charcoal grill and I decide, you know what? I'll just squeeze a few extra drops of lighter fluid. Sometimes I don't use lighter fluid, but on the occasions that I do, I'll just go ahead and give it a little boost with some lighter fluid, and then it goes. It doesn't make that noise, actually. I suck at sound effects and voices. I don't do impressions, so sorry about that. You get the idea, though. Throw a little bit of fuel on the fire, even if it's one that's relatively dormant or hasn't been stoked in a while, and all of a sudden you've got flames shooting everywhere. Hobby. It's After Hours with Amy Lawrence on CBS Sports Radio. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. You can find us on Twitter, After Hours CBS. And we've got the link to join us on Survivor Island. It's super easy. It's just an email. And then, of course, you got to remember to choose your football team, your one winner each week. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to wait until the very last second before we close it off. In fact, we may even have more than one island, but you don't want to wait till the last second. That's what Isaac used to do, and he would forget to make his picks, and they'd be out just because he forgot on our Facebook page, too. So it's pinned to the top of each of our social media sites. 855-212-4227. That's 855-212-4CBS. I would love to hear your reaction to the way that Javi Baez is now responding to the fans, the New York Mets fans who booed the team during their recent free-for-all. This was a brutal stretch. Let's be honest. The Mets had been sitting in first place in the NL East for probably 75% of the season, but we knew their offense was sputtering badly. It was really more about the Braves underachieving, the Phillies underachieving, and those two teams being below 500 than it was about the Mets staking their claim to be the winners, to be the badasses of the NL East. No, it was almost inevitable. Now, I don't believe anything is ever completely inevitable because I don't believe that the future is set in stone. It can be changed and tweaked. I'm not so sure I believe in destiny. But these Mets didn't do enough that they had to know this was coming, especially when you consider the injuries off and on to Jacob deGrom, Noah Syndergaard, who's now test positive for COVID, all kinds of issues with their pitching staff. Plus the fact that they rarely could support their pitchers and give them a soft place to land. They really couldn't cover the mistakes of their pitchers. Then you think about Javi Baez, Francisco Lindor, best friends who wanted to play together. Lindor has had a brutal first year in New York. This was the crown jewel, so to speak, of Steve Cohen's first offseason as the new owner of the Mets. Prying Francisco Lindor away, making sure that the Mets fan base knew that they were going to go after primetime free agents and they were going to be competitive in the free agent market. But Lindor's been a disaster. Now, credit to him, he owns it. Along comes his friend Javi Baez, who joined the Mets at the trade deadline. The two guys were excited to play together, had to wait a little bit while Lindor was injured. But since Baez got to New York, he's hitting a proud 207 with 3 homers and 5 RBI in 16 games. And so what's happening? Well, he's getting booed. The Mets are getting booed. They've dropped from first place in the National League East to third since the trade deadline, out of the playoff picture. And get this, their record, 9 wins, 20 losses. And boy, have they found some brutal ways to lose. I think of a recent game against the San Francisco Giants. They got swept in that series, in which they had bases loaded in the bottom of the 9th and could not get a run across. But that's just a very tiny microcosm. Honestly, that might be a microcosm of the Mets' offensive struggles. And so they're 9-20 since the trade deadline. Javi Baez and his BFF are really not doing a whole lot to turn the ship with a P, around. And so they're getting booed. Now, we had heard this last week. Some athletes, actually, and I don't remember who it was that we had heard from. Maybe it was a pitcher. But Luis Rojas also commenting that it was hard to hear the team booing them off the field. That was actually the game against the Giants in which they left the bases loaded. And, of course, it's not easy to know that your fan base is pissed at you. Aaron Loop, thank you, producer James. It's not easy to hear that. But as I always say, if you're an athlete who's worth your salary or even worth your weight in salt, forget salary, you already feel a hell of a lot worse than the fans could ever feel about how badly it's going. You think these Mets don't recognize that they suck right now and that they can't buy a win? You don't think Luis Rojas sees the writing on the wall? You don't think that they know how crucial this stretch and how they've completely botched it? So I don't love booing. Okay, I'll be honest. I don't love it. I get it. The fans have bought the tickets. They've earned the right to be there. They're invested, right? So I say this a lot about fans. The difference between fans and athletes themselves is, to the athletes, it's a business. Now, do they get emotional invested? Sure. Same way as I get emotional invested in my career. But they approach it differently than we do. They can be a little more rational about it. What we can't do as fans is separate head from heart. That's the problem, is we can't see it rationally. As fans, we reserve the right to be illogical, irrational, and completely off our rockers. And so I don't love booing, but I understand it. We feel like we're invested as fans. Now, does that mean you have to throw things on the field? No. Does it mean you have to threaten someone's mama or make comments about someone's family? No. Booing is generally not that personal. It's directed at whoever is on the field. But it doesn't make it easy for the athletes to hear. Now, here's Javi Baez, who we know is very fiery. He's very passionate. And in his full month of being in New York, he's decided he's got a message for you as fans. So as he watches the Mets and helps the Mets, you hear the highlight there on the Mets radio network, hits a home run. As they're winning this game against the Nationals on Sunday, he decides, we're going to give it back to you in your face, Mets fans. And so what does he do? He and others, it wasn't just him, he and other Mets flash the thumbs down, oh my gosh, why can't I say it? The thumbs, I don't say this very often, the thumbs down sign to the crowd, to the fans there at Citi Field. And at first, it caught a few raised eyebrows, right? But he actually was more than happy to explain to Mets fans why he came up with this thumbs down signal, which, by the way, he's been doing, he says, for a few weeks.
If we win together, then we got to lose together, you know, and the fans are a really big part of it. So in my case, they got to be better. You know, I play for the fans and I love the fans, but, you know, if they're going to do that, they just putting more pressure on the team. Yeah, I mean, it was my opinion, you know, and it's just how I feel, you know. Like I say, I love the fans and I like playing for the fans, but we can't have our fans against us. We're not machines. We're gonna struggle, you know. We're gonna struggle 7 times out of 10. It just feels bad when we strike out. When I strike out and I get booed.
I think it's something that he's probably getting used to. You know, probably. I mean, he's experiencing it's the first time he's out of another uniform, right? So he's seen probably some of these things in his time here, and probably that's why he's sharing, he's venting.
Now, I feel like Luis Rojas was relatively generous. He was giving Javi Baez the benefit of the doubt. That is not the same type of reaction coming from Mets president Sandy Alderson, who, of course, is very familiar with New York. His comment on Sunday night read this: these comments and any gestures by him, meaning Baez, or other players with a similar intent are totally unacceptable and will not be tolerated. I mean, it wasn't a gang sign, for heaven's sakes, but I can understand why Alderson is saying this is not what we want. Is it harmless? Probably. Does it do anything to ingratiate yourself with your new fan base? Heck no. And that's what Luis Rojas is saying. He's getting used to New York. Now, that raised my eyebrows a little bit. This guy played with the Cubs, for heaven's sakes. They are passionate fans in Chicago on the north side. But Alderson goes on to say, booing is every fan's right. So it was Baez, it was Lindor, it was Kevin Pillar who were displaying the thumbs down gesture after they got hit. So after they would do something positive, they would boo the crowd, as in, screw you. In fact, if you wanted to use another finger and point it upwards, that would be the exact same thing that these guys were doing. They just chose to use the thumbs down and make it look like they were booing the fans. But here's the issue. Again, I don't love booing, but Javi Baez, you cannot win this war. You're brand new. In the eyes of Mets fans, you know nothing about them. The struggles they've been through, the number of years that they have suffered with the Mets. You don't know what you're walking into, man. You cannot win this. At the very least, don't feed the trolls, because the more you encourage them with your thumbs down gesture, the more they're going to boo you. The louder they're going to boo you, and the less likely they are to accept you as a member of the New York Mets. It's After Hours with Amy Lawrence, CBS Sports Radio.